Hello, good evening. I am Ajit Kumar Jha, the editor of the Public Global and the CEO of Power Pixar. And today I actually want to focus our video post on Donald Trump's attacks that has started on Harvard. Just a few weeks ago, I had made a video post on Trump administration's attack on Columbia, which is another Ivy League university based in New York. And now the Trump administration is basically after Harvard University. And the whole video will be why. We will try and give a small brief history of Harvard and why is the Trump administration doing that. Because many of our viewers are basically from India, and many of them have just heard the name of Harvard but do not know the history of it. So let me begin by giving a brief history of the university itself. Harvard started in the year 1636. Remember, 1636. We are talking about a university which is almost 600 years old, a little less than 600 years, or almost 600 years old. So this is one of the first university that was set up in the US, and it was founded by a vote by the great and general court of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. John Harvard, most people think that John Harvard constructed Harvard. That's not actually true. John Harvard was the major benefactor. He donated half his estate and about 400 books to Harvard University. It became, John Harvard himself went to Cambridge in England. And there is a little story that when Cambridge has about 7 colleges in which you have this plant, a creeper called the Ivy League. So when John Harvard came over and he became the main benefactor, that plant of Ivy League was put on Harvard. And later on, some of the other universities that were created in the East Coast, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Columbia, Brown, etc. And that's why the use of the phrase Ivy League universities. So, of course, there are many universities in the US which are not Ivy League, but almost at par with Harvard, like, for example, I would say Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego in California, Chicago, University of Chicago, even Caltech in California, and several other universities in the US. They are very, very good. But the whole idea was that initially these Ivy Leagues were considered great schools. Now that I've given a brief history, let me also mention that till about 1900, American universities were not considered at par with the European universities, especially Oxford and Cambridge, London School of Economics, some of the top German universities, especially universities like Heidelberg, several others in Germany. Also in France, Sorbonne and others were considered sort of much better off than the American universities. It is after, initially American universities were more famous because of their games, because of their basketball teams, their baseball teams. Those the maximum investment used to go into that. It is around after 1900 that the American government started giving massive investment into American universities. Lots of funds were put into American universities. Faculty from all over the world, initially, especially from Europe, later from all over the world, were hired in these top universities. And at the same time, the American governments, subsequent governments, never interfered with the academic freedom of these universities. So what made almost by the First World War, Second World War, the American universities were turning out to be top-notch universities. They competed and they ended up even becoming more famous than some of these English and European universities, was precisely because of the kind of funding that the government gave and this policy of no interference at all. And that is why the Trump administration's effort to destroy Harvard must be seen not only as an attack on Harvard's sort of tradition of academic freedom, but an attack on all higher institutions, all elite universities of America. In fact, I would argue the entire American university system. And therefore, it is, I would call it, extremely authoritarian in nature. And it's some kind of, it's a strange variety of conservatism, which is racist in character. It's basically meant for preventing foreign students from entering Harvard. 31% of students at Harvard today are from abroad. In fact, in the academic year 2024-25, almost 788 Indian students got enrolled at Harvard. In the last 1 decade or even longer, between 500 to 800 Indian students enroll every year at Harvard. Among the foreign countries, the highest number of students at Harvard are from China, number 2, Canada, number 3, India. And in the last 4 years, the number of foreign students, or even longer, the number of international students have risen by 26.75% at Harvard. But the whole idea of what is exactly going on, why has this kind of attacks begun at Harvard by Donald Trump? There are a lot of stories going around. Some of these stories are not confirmed. One of them is, of course, that Donald Trump's son, he could not get admission at Harvard, or for that matter, any of the elite Ivy League American schools. He ended up going to New York University, NYU, which is again a very elite university. But some people argue that it's a revenge by Donald Trump against Harvard. So Trump's action targeting international students is a cruel maneuver to force foreign students in the midst of college or graduate education to find a place somewhere else or to go back to their own country. The most recent action, let me give some numbers. The first action follows Trump administration's announcement in April of this year. I remember Trump has barely sort of completed about 100 days. So in April, the Trump administration cut off $2 billion funds to Harvard. And the reason given was, unless Harvard agreed to federal oversight of its admissions, faculty hiring, and governance, which means all admission of students, all of the hiring of faculty, both tenured and non-tenured, and how the administration of governed should be based on a federal government overseeing the entire thing. So it's a direct government interference, as I pointed out, that in the history of the US, almost from 1900, no government had ever sort of interfered in top university administration in any form whatsoever. Subsequently, Secretary of Education Linda McMahon announced that Harvard would no longer qualify for any kind of federal grants. So first they cut off the $2 billion funds that I mentioned, then that Harvard would not qualify for any kind of federal grants, which is also breaking from that tradition that I pointed out from 1900. Number three, Christopher Rufo, who advises Trump administration on matters of higher education, I'm just quoting him. He said that the goal of this new oversight of the Trump administration should be to cause universities, quote, feel existential terror and put them in recession. I mean, how shocking, for a country whose pride is basically its soft power, among the top 100 universities. I would say half of them would be universities inside the United States, among the top 100 universities in the world. For that country to start knocking and cutting its own base, the higher education, will obviously not lead to the purpose that President Trump set up, the MAGA, Make America Great Again. What I think it will lead to is basically destroy America for the first time and make America sort of decline again, not great again. So, in fact, one commentator pointed out this is exactly what authoritarians in other countries have done in trying to control universities. In fact, in our own country, in India, for example, the Modi administration's attempt to control the hiring of faculty, even admission procedures in prestigious universities like the Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi, JNU that we know popularly, even other universities, for example, in Hyderabad, University of Hyderabad, Central University, the name came. Then again, universities in West Bengal, universities all around the country, several of the IITs, several other institutions have got directly in conflict with the Modi government, for example. And it's a similar kind of situation. Attack the top universities because they are quote unquote left liberal, or because they are dissident, or because they don't run exactly on the principles that governments want. And the argument I was making, that precisely American universities became great universities because they did not toe the government line. In fact, let me give you personal examples. I was a student at JNU at one time. Later on, went to Oxford University in England, and then later on moved to University of California, Los Angeles in the United States. So let me point out that when Margaret Thatcher was not given the doctorate by Oxford, one main reason was the protest by the students. And I was precisely there at that moment. I remember how students were protesting at that time because Margaret Thatcher was the arch conservative, whereas the university student body and a lot of the faculty supported it. They were basically left liberals. But at the same time, the truth is that, again, today I'm just going to quote figures of Harvard, not other universities, but that Harvard alone has produced 161 Nobel laureates. Now, think of that. If you are attacking, and by the way, many of these Nobel laureates out of the 161 are actually foreigners, including Amartya Sen, for example, are a Nobel laureate economist. So the point is, if Harvard is attacked by the government, its funds are cut, its admission policy, hiring policy, and others are based on a federal oversight, it will destroy the very character of Harvard. The changes that the Trump administration is doing is going to reduce the power held by students and untenured faculty, reduce the power held by both tenured and untenured faculty and administrators. And the idea is that stop the activism by students. The government wants to force Harvard to commit more to scholarship rather than to activism. And I'm basing this on a letter sent to Harvard by Trump officials. The letter also stipulates that changes in faculty hiring and student admission, including mandating quote unquote viewpoint diversity in admissions and hiring. In fact, the funny thing is, we are talking about international students here. We are talking about how Harvard is actually increasing its diversity. As I said, in the last 4 years itself, the number of international students have increased 25, almost 25%, 26%. Now, that means increasing diversity in admission and hiring, whereas the Trump administration is claiming precisely on those grounds that it wants to stop the funding of Harvard. It basically wants to throttle Harvard. The university, again, according to that letter, the university, quote, shall satisfy the federal government as to its competence and good faith to audit the student body, faculty, staff, and leadership for viewpoint diversity, such that each department, field, or teaching unit must be individually viewpoint diverse. Now, that is precisely what Harvard is doing, and the Trump administration is against it. I mean, the Trump administration is not only racist, it's totally sort of, anti-foreigner, any kind. I mean, you've seen the way once Trump became the president, he started sending all foreign immigrants back to their country. We saw plane loads of Indians coming back. The claim is, of course, that they only want to do that to illegal immigrants, but they go ahead and do it for all types. I mean, foreign students are so much under pressure in American universities today, or even foreigners otherwise. And again, going back to the what would happen if Harvard were to allow the Trump administration to continue in the way it is wanting to? It would give the federal government astounding control over critical aspects of Harvard University that are protected by the First Amendment of the American Constitution. The First Amendment protects the academic freedoms of the university. The demand letter from the Trump administration also requires the elimination of diversity, equity, and inclusion program, requires a new system of student discipline rather than freedom, and directs the university to punish students, quote unquote, punish students who had participated in particular demonstrations. The Trump administration is calling all the demonstrations as anti-Semitic. And that is what it is basically attacking Harvard. Earlier on, it attacked Columbia. And the fear is that this will soon move towards other universities, namely Berkeley, many of the other liberal universities in America. In fact, once they play this game on Harvard, they will be entitled to play against any American university, because Harvard symbolizes the greatness, the superiority, at the same time, the elitist nature of American education. The ostensible basis for the initial letter to Harvard was, I'm just using the legal language, Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So there is a twist here. The 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title VI, is being used by the Trump administration. And remember the civil rights. The Civil Rights Act was to give freedom to Black Americans. And this is being used, twisted 180 degrees by the Trump administration to throttle Harvard. So basically, Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which says that recipients of federal funds, when I say federal funds, I mean the central government in America. So recipients of federal funds cannot discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity. The claim was that Harvard, and the claim that the Trump administration claims, that Harvard violated Title VI by being deliberately indifferent to anti-Semitism. So it's not protecting the Jews. That's the case that the Trump administration is making. During the student protest for the freedom of Palestine. But virtually none of what the Trump administration has demanded is about alleged anti-Semitism on campus. It is basically about using the enormous power of the federal government to try and devastate one of the most prestigious universities in the country, to send a message to all other universities and schools in the United States about what they face if they do not cower to what Trump wants. Indeed, the Trump administration has followed none of the legal requirements under Title VI for a cutoff of funds. Why? Because under the law, there must be a notice period, a hearing, and a finding of deliberate indifference before funds are cut off. There must be 30 days notice to the House of Representatives and Senate of the cutoff of funds, and an opportunity to correct the violations. Any cutoff has to be limited to the program found to be in violation of Title VI. The Trump administration has followed none of this. It's purely arbitrary. Fortunately, courts have right now protected Harvard, and of course, there is going to be a period when this entire drama is going to go on. But the reason why we all must protest, because this is a new pattern in what I would call neoconservatism, in this so-called MAGA-based conservatism, which attacks any kind of academic freedom, any kind of independent thinking, any kind of dissidence, as they can call it anti-Semitic. Tomorrow they can call it anti-American. Almost like we in India, any kind of attack, any kind of questions asked from the government is considered as anti-national. This is a very dangerous kind of a new kind of authoritarianism, something that we saw in Germany under Hitler. And that is why many of the German schools were destroyed at that time. This whole story, once in the past, I have already told my audience, I'll repeat, that the whole creation of the Frankfurt School, how the Frankfurt School, all the faculty, very, very well-known faculty, the story of Walter Benjamin, how he died when he was running away from Europe to America, Theodor Adorno, Max Horkheimer, Herbert Marcuse, and all these top intellectuals, how they were all Jews, and they had to flee Germany and go to the US. And that's how the New School of Social Research was started in the United States. And that destroyed many of the German universities. At one time, German universities used to be on the top, almost at par with Oxford and Cambridge. But this continuity that Harvard has had, as I pointed out, from 1636, that is being broken by the Trump administration, and that will destroy in the future the entire sort of system of American university education. And that is something we all must protest, whether it is in the US or in India, whether it is in Germany or some other part of the world. we don't want that unfortunate repeat of history when Nalanda University, one of the oldest universities in the world, was destroyed, and then we had to today recreate it. We will continue with this program on top global universities in our future videos. Thanks for now. Please do subscribe to our video.